Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for Inside the Zone. Justin Kinney of Optimum Performance Sports is here. What can we talk about? What could we possibly talk about this week? What could we possibly
There's a
talk
big game
about?
coming up.
Yeah, but we're going to talk Carroll Homestead.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's the one we're talking
We'll
about.
get to the big one later then.
Yeah. When you look at this Carroll Homestead game, as we talked about last week, not really any changes in the SAC. Everybody won as expected. Homestead played pretty well, a 20-point win against Northside. You knew Southside was going to be a little bit overmatched against Carroll. And then Bishop Dwenger with a win. We thought they might be challenged a little bit more by Concordia. Concordia shot themselves in the foot early with a couple of fumbles. You can't do that against a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes like Dwenger does. So we're literally almost at the exact same point as we were last week.
Yeah, nothing. It's still status quo in the SAC, right?
Homestead still controls its own destiny. If the Spartans win out, they will be the SAC champs for the second year in a row. But obviously, Carroll is the biggest challenge left on their schedule. How do you see,
much so.
Going into this one, what's your take on this matchup?
I think we can look back last Friday to the Northside game to take a little bit out of that game if you're Homestead. So Deuce Taylor and Northside were able to move the football, right? Relatively, I would say easily, but they were able to score enough points that most teams would be able to win. But Northside's defense struggles mightily in stopping people. So you feel if Northside has the second best offense in the SAC and Carroll has the best offense in the SAC, can Homestead get the stops necessary in this one to get a win? And at this point, as good as the Homestead defense is, you have to question, do they have the game plan and the personnel to slow down Jeff Becker?
On the flip side of that, we've seen Mason Englert running around behind defenses. I mean, I'm stunned every time I see it.
Somebody double team this man, please.
I am so confused every week. It looks the same. But obviously Jeffrey Becker is he and Deuce Taylor are very similar in terms of their mobility, ability to throw on the run, which I think is really what separates good quarterbacks in high school from great quarterbacks in high school. So what can they do if you're the Homestead defense? As you mentioned, they're on notice this week.
They are.
What can they do, especially having prepped against a guy like Deuce Taylor for an offense like Carroll has?
You're right. I think a lot of the attributes you take from game planning for Deuce Taylor, you can now game plan for Jeff Becker. We saw Bishop Dwenger able to fluster Becker and not allow him to sit in the pocket and pick apart defenses. Even though he is good on the run making plays, he's not as good as he is when he has protection in the pocket. So Bishop Dwenger was able to flush him out, get him on the run, and it's difficult even for Jeff Becker to throw on the run, particularly if you're throwing downfield, throwing across your body. So if you're Homestead, pressure on Jeff Becker helps. If you let him sit back there and pick you apart, he is capable of making your defense look very silly.
You need Matt Miller and the guys up front to make some plays on the defensive line. On the flip side of that, Evan Armsby, and we talked about this last week, I would say he's probably the most improved guy from week 1 in our area to where we are here in week 7.
Yes.
Especially the past 2 weeks. And it hasn't been like they're playing Sisters of the Poor.
Right, yeah.
So he's looked really good in the last couple of weeks. The passing offense is going. Nate Anderson is having big games.
Yeah.
Kistler's getting involved. I mean, they've got a lot of weapons on the outside. So in this flip side scenario, if you're Carroll, what do you do to slow down Ormsby and that Homestead offense that we thought was going to be super run heavy with Braden Hardwick now is almost seems like a typical Homestead pass heavy offense?
I think that when you game plan for Homestead now, early in the season you said we're going to stop Braden Hardwick and then we'll deal with everything else once we stop Hardwick. I think now your game planning changes to we have to defend the pass first and then deal with Hardwick because of how effective Evan Ormsby has been for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks for this football team. So your thought process, if you're Carroll going in, is all of a sudden we have a quarterback we have to contend with, we have to respect, and we have to game plan against. Whereas if this game is played in week 2 or week 3, Carroll's not thinking about that. So if this does become a track meet, Evan Ormsby is fully capable of leading Homestead to a win. But I still think it comes down to that Homestead defense against Jeff Becker and Mason Englert. I mean, game plan against the kid.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind. One thing I really like about this, Homestead's offensive line has a lot of experience, has a lot of guys that can play that are going to be, when we see the all SAC teams, we're going to see first teamers, second teamers, and honorable mention guys on that offensive line. I think making sure that Evan Ormsby has the time to throw is going to be big, even though I don't think people think about Carroll as a defensive unit that gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I still think that's going to be key to give Ormsby that time.
So I think one of the more underrated defenders in all the SAC is Hunter Mertz there at the outside linebacker spot, and a guy that can consistently disrupt on the edge and get in the offensive backfield and create disruption. I think the play of Hunter Mertz, those outside backers, and also the front line is going to be key in being able to really get to Evan Ormsby, get an arm in his face, and really disrupt his flow, particularly that with the rapport that he's built with guys like Kistler and Anderson.
Okay, let's get on to the rest of the SAC games because we do have some more interesting matchups. You've got the Battle of the Bishops, Dwenger at Lewis. Lewis has proven more potent offensively here as we gotten into the middle juncture of the season.
Yeah.
And Northrop at Snyder. That'll be an interesting one, I believe, because this is the first time in a while where I think people could conceivably pick Northrop as a favorite.
Yeah.
However, it's always difficult to go up against Snyder, especially you're talking a battle like this where you throw out the records, all that kind of stuff. How do you see those two games playing out? Because these are, traditional rivalry type games. We've also got the totem pole.
The totem pole as well. So you look at Northrop that hasn't beaten Snyder this century
in a while.
I think it's late 90s. I want to say. Could that long streak end on Friday? I think this is the best opportunity in the last decade, at least, for Northrop to beat Snyder. They need to take advantage of it because who knows when you're going to play a 3-3 Snyder team that looks the way it has certain weeks, again at this point. So I think Northrop needs to take advantage and get that monster monkey off its back and finally claim Spuller Stadium as their own. People are always bantering about whose home it is. Northrop can lay claim this Friday. I like the Bruins in this one. And, Concordia and Wayne, it's kind of like everybody else has a natural rival, and those are the two teams that are kind of left.
Hey, we're here.
You are rivals. So
we are here.
They play.
Week.
And, you like the matchup, I feel, with the Concordia with that Wayne offense. And then North and South, that is the true throughout the records because we've seen so many instances over the past, decades where one team looks heavily favored and the other one beats it, or you expect a blowout and we don't get one. That game will be closer than people expect. I just don't know if South Side can keep up on the scoreboard with North if it does indeed become a track meet.
Let's talk about the Northeast 8 now because things I think they even got a little more interesting this past week because we saw the gap between, Columbia City played one of the better teams and they beat New Haven. New Haven hung around. They were down, then they came back. They hung around. It was only a 3-point win for Columbia City. That was after Columbia City went to overtime with DeKalb the week before. But their schedule, again, ramps up towards the end of the season. They've got East Noble. And of course, East Noble last week lost to Norwell, who they had Norwell on the ropes down 17-0, and Norwell wins it at their place 21-17. Leo went and beat Belmont fairly easily. They've got Huntington North and then Belmont's at New Haven this week. So Columbia City and East Noble, how do you see this one playing out? And have we underrated Norwell maybe a little bit at this point in the season? Absolutely.
I feel we needed a wake-up call, or some at least needed it last Friday. I don't think anybody expected Norwell to go to Kendallville and get a win. I think we expected that game to be a lot closer than many people were considering. But down 17-0 at the end of the first quarter, coming back and winning that game, a late score by Norwell to get, or an early in the fourth, I believe, to put them over the top.
Eli Riley.
Eli Riley, everything I heard from that game and watching highlights was he was spot on. He's not a kid that's going to wow you when you look at the box score every week, but he's a kid that's as accurate as they come around the area. He has the confidence as a multi-year starter at quarterback for Norwell, really the leader of that group. Very Dallas Schwaller-like that we saw a year ago for Adams Central, is very much the captain of that offense. And credit to Norwell. And now, 5-1 and a big challenge, going forward for other teams. We felt Columbia City had their big three the next 3 weeks, and now they have Norwell sitting there week 9. So for a team, I think you talk about one player you're missing. East Noble misses Rowan Zolman as much as any team misses a single player.
A big playmaker.
Big playmaker offensively, but also the captain of the back end of that defense. And how often over the past 3 weeks have we seen East Noble get beat in the vertical passing game? and you watch it and play after play, you're going, man, if Zolman was on the field with this, that doesn't go that far. I think he could have been the difference even last week as he could have been the 2 weeks before. So hopefully East Noble gets him back soon.
In the ACAC, South Adams made their statement last week.
They did?
They were slightly favored going in against Adams Central, and they proved up to the task, 29-9, in a game that, I don't know if it felt like a blowout, but a 20-point win against your rival, that's a good one for South Adams. And the one thing I know that Coach wanted to clean up was penalties heading into that game. And just wanted to play a cleaner game of football in all three phases. If you're South Adams now that you've got that win, first off, what impressed you about South Adams in that game, and what are your takeaways from that game? And two, how does South Adams use that going forward to make sure that, A, they win the conference championship, which they should now fairly easily, but is ready to play against teams like Adams Central when it comes to the postseason?
Well, I think you look first at South Adams. What impressed me, getting down early and you felt, oh no, here we go again. It's going to be a repeat of regional. But South Adams was able to shake off the slow start, make some plays. James Arnold was able to get the ball downfield to guys like Drew Stutzman and make plays. When you're looking at going forward with South Adams, they lose 2 offensive linemen to injuries a couple weeks ago. Sam Plattner, their center, is out for the year. When you're looking at the depth of a 1A program that doesn't necessarily have that built-in next man up mentality with a confident junior to step in for a senior or whatever.
Well, these seniors have been playing since they've
been playing for forever, right? So when we talk South Adams and a deep postseason run, I feel they need to stay healthy because the margin for error in 1A with the lack of depth with these teams is the more you lose frontline guys, the worse it is. So going forward, South Adams has this conference wrapped up in my opinion, but going forward, injuries, something to keep an eye on. And as Brett Kunkel from Bluffton pointed out, Week 9 still an open date for South Adams. Warren Central also has an open date.
Oh, my.
Week 9.
Oh,
so
my.
Maybe Greg Moser should call up Warren Central.
Warren Central's struggling a little bit this year by Warren Central standards. But that's a school with what, like 4,000 kids?
Yeah, probably not. It's a
that's
joke
more than
with all
how many
of us.
people are in Bern.
Yeah, not 4,000.
I was going to say.
So South Adams will be perfectly content with their Week 9 bye at this point, as opposed to playing Warren Central.
Yeah, it sounds like they need to get healthy for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the NECC because I think most people had Angola as 1A and maybe Fairfield as 1B or 2 last week. But Fairfield went up there and played a good game of football. They ended up winning by double digits. So they're now in the driver's seat of the big division. Eastside has got the small division under control. But when you take a look at the way that Fairfield and Angola played, what's your takeaway from that game? Are we underrating Fairfield maybe? Or has Angola season been such a roller coaster with starting and stopping and this and that they just haven't gotten a pattern of a rhythm, if you will, to the season yet?
I was very impressed Friday night up at Angola watching Fairfield. You looked at the beginning of their schedule and you're like, okay, they're beating up on teams, but how good are they really? And Coach Andy Thomas of Angola was telling me last week, this is a good football team. They run the triple option, very deceptively quick too, and they pretty much dissected Angola with that offense. They were taking the 4 yards per play and perfectly content with it. And without 2 fumbles in the first half, one of which was returned for a touchdown by Kyle Brandt, I think Fairfield dominates that game in convincing fashion. So when you look at going forward with Fairfield, with Coach Matt Thacker that has taken a team that had 0 wins his first year, couldn't even play a game because of lack of healthy players.
I mean, what a difference like 3 seasons have made. It's like a complete 180 for them.
It's nuts. And he even admitted, we're not pretty. It's ugly. It's ugly football, and he's like, we're perfectly fine. We're, blue-collar area of Elkhart County, and that's how we're going to play. So Fairfield, legit. Not sure how deep of a postseason run they can make, but they're a legit big school division champion once everything is all said and done. And then nobody's touching Eastside in small school division.
Yeah. Eastside hasn't given up a point in a month. They've got 4 consecutive shutouts and then set the record, program record, which dates back almost a little over 40 years with 69 points last week. I mean, what can anyone do to slow down Eastside, and what can Eastside do? Because right now, to be frank, they're not really being challenged.
Yeah.
What can they do? Because ultimately, they want a sectional championship. They want a regional championship. This is a team that they think can maybe make a run to Lucas Oil Stadium.
Right. Maybe the Angola game Week 9 will present somewhat much of a challenge in that game. I think that'll help Todd Mason with his team. But you have to look at maybe the warning signs that we saw of South Adams last year, where you're just beating up on people week after week after week, that it's tough to keep that edge. And then once you need that edge, it's too late in the postseason. So I think that's what Todd Mason has to guard against this time of the year, week 6, 7, 8, 9, where you're just blowing out teams. And then you have to have that, flip the switch and be ready every week. So I like Eastside. But going forward, they have to guard against that complacency.
Am I crazy? Isn't it funny? Isn't it cool to see Todd Mason up there in the box? Like, instead of a head coach being on the sideline, he's up there in the box. I mean, I think that's great. You have to have a lot of confidence in your assistant coaches, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they're dealing with teenagers, 14 to 18-year-olds on the sideline, and for you to be up there, that's actually says a lot about your coaching staff.
It is, and you haven't witnessed everything in high school football until you've seen the official on the sideline have a conversation with Todd Mason with no fans in between and them yelling back and forth at each other. It's 2020.
What a year, and what a season it has been. Yeah, we're already here in week 7. I mean, we've got this Friday and then 2 more Fridays, and then we're off to the postseason.
And we're off, and who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? We're here. That's all we can ask for, and hopefully we'll be back next Monday with even better analysis as we get ready.
Is there other people coming in?
No. No. You're the only one that we can afford, and we don't pay you. That'll do it for this week's edition of Inside the Zone. I'm Glenn. He's Justin. We'll see you next Monday, maybe on Inside the Zone.